Notice that I fold the paper with a crease down the middle. Then I fold it over like I'm going to make an airplane, like people have made, and try to use the lines. So that's the purpose of these lines, so you make it straight. Then you pop over the leaf, like so. If you've ever made an airplane, it looks like I'm making an airplane, but I'm not. And then you just fold it up like this. Make sure it looks just like that. Now, here's the trick on this thing. When you do this, you want to divide this distance right here into 3 parts. So you're going to just fold it over from the long side. You're going to put it right about there. So here's the first part, and you folded it over to make the second part. And then you just take what's left and fold it back over it like this. That's 3 parts that you're doing. So it should look just like that. Very simple. This I learned years ago from my dad when I was just a kid, and I've never forgotten it. All right, now then, you want the story.
Yes.
Well, the story can be told any way you want to tell it, or anything that you like. But I call it Old Joe, because Old Joe is the local community drunk. And he's a husband, he has children, he has no job, he's just a real bad individual who is not doing what he's supposed to do for his wife, his family, and so forth. But there's one man that's in the town that's rarely concerned about Old Joe, and that is the local minister of the community. And he is always talking to him when he sees him walking down the street and staggering down the sidewalk or whatever. He never sees him in church with him. But when he sees him, he'll stop and talk to him and ask him to maybe think about changing his ways, being a good father, being a good husband, get a job, make some money, and take care of your family like a husband should do. But Joe doesn't seem to be interested in that except the local tavern. Well, it just so happens that the local pastor has been so good for so many years, and the Lord decides that he wants to take him home early because he's been such a good person. So an angel appeared at the foot of the pastor's bed one night, 12 o'clock, and it woke up the pastor. And the angel had this in his hand. And he said, "Pastor, the Lord wants to take you home early. You've been so good, doing everything you can for the community and so forth." He said he thinks he'll just reward you and take you home. Well, Pastor didn't really know what to expect, because he had never seen an angel before. But the angel said, "I have your ticket. This is your ticket that you're going to get you into heaven. You have 24 hours to tell everyone goodbye So, and take care of your local business that you need to take care of in 24 hours. Then, God will take you home with this ticket. The angel disappears. Joe is the very first person that the pastor wanted to say goodbye to, because he knew that if he was going to heaven, Joe wasn't going to make it. So he wanted to tell him goodbye on this earth before he left. So when it come daylight, and he started walking around looking for him, and he saw Joe coming down the sidewalk, drunk as usual, staggering. And the pastor goes up to Joe and says, "Hey, Joe, I need to talk to you right quick." And Joe said, "Okay." And the pastor says, "Joe, I have my ticket to heaven. I'm going to be leaving in less than 24 hours. And I want to tell you goodbye, because I know you're not going where I'm going." He said, but Joe looked at him and said, "Oh, Pastor, why don't you give me part of your ticket and get us both into heaven?" And being a pastor and loving person that he was, he would do anything to get Joe into heaven. So he said, "Okay." So what he does is this. He takes this ticket and starts to give him half of his ticket. And he tears it right down the first seam of his ticket. And he lays this out like this to Joe, and Joe looks at it, and he said, "Pastor, I don't think that's half of the ticket. Could you give me more of it so I can get in with you?" He says, "Okay." So he goes and tears it again right down the next seam like this. Then he gives this part to Joe also. The pastor has this. Joe looked at it and says, "Well, let me see what it is, what the ticket is." So the pastor says, "Okay, let's look and see what it is." So he starts unfolding all this paper. Oh, here's one other piece right here. And he uses all parts of it, all pieces of it, to put this puzzle together. Now, you see what it spells. And he says, "Oh my goodness, that's where I'm going," he said. He said, "Yes, that's where you're going, unless you change your ways." He says, "Okay, but what do you have, Pastor?" And he said, "I don't know, I'm looking." He said, "Let's see." And he opens it up, piece by piece. It's just one piece of paper, and it turns out to be